Did Ukraine just make some of the biggest advances near Verbova that we've seen in the entire counteroffensive? Plus, is the U.S. starting to cut off the spigot to Ukraine? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's November 10th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, taking a look at the control map, you can see there's a tremendous difference here. You can see this whole Russian salient here, about a kilometer deep, as well as nearly another kilometer deep of Russian lines, all of whom are being pushed back. I mean, you can see this is a significant change here of, probably over a kilometer if we're honest. Yeah, let's see. We can start it from, let's get the ruler out here. From here, basically to here, we're talking about 2 kilometers of reversals in 24 hours. That's as fast as probably the fastest point of Ukraine's prior counteroffensive, probably another kilometer here near Novoprokopivka. And what's significant, I think, first off, it's in the face of some of Russia's most elite regiments, air assault regiments. These are some serious VDV formations. And the fact that it's happened over the span of 24 hours is actually pretty shocking, if we're honest with ourselves here. You can see, again, right, Russian forces, a little bit of attrition and then a whole kind of collapse. So what I also think is a driver of this is Russian operations in and around the Dnipro River. You can see that a lot of these reinforcements have to be diverted to try to deal with this Ukrainian crossing here. And I think what's interesting to me is that 300 troops is not a ton, but it's also not so small that it can be ignored. And so the result is that Russian forces are forced to make increasingly difficult choices, particularly regarding Ukrainian efforts in and around Verbove. It takes a lot of forces to plug this salient, and they're being diverted back to the Dnipro and Kherson region. You might recall that a lot of this region had its forces actually pulled in order to defend Verbove from the Ukraine counteroffensive. So now Russia's at a point where it has only bad choices it can make. Other than that, we look over at the combat map, you can see that there's been something in the range of 55 combat engagements. Again, Russian forces really scattering these across Verbove, Volodar, Donetsk. Again, I think we're seeing an almost clockwork picture here where Russian forces are less about launching sweeping decisive attacks and more about just simply throwing their own troops at Ukrainian forces. I think Russia's probably looking to just increase the rate of attrition. If it trades one Russian soldier for one Ukrainian soldier, Russia believes eventually Ukrainians will give up. Now, if you guys aren't aware, if you've been in a gas station, you know that energy drinks are like $5 a pop now. It's absolutely preposterous that they think they can charge that. In fact, when I was deployed, I used to take these generic military energy drinks called Rippets. They were disgusting, loaded with sugar, loaded with carbonation, and boy howdy, when you had to drink them when they were lukewarm, it was revolting. Plus, they were a pain to carry on patrol. That's why I created Strike Gum, worked with a manufacturer right here in the USA out in Denver to figure out a way to combine an entire energy drink, 90 milligrams of caffeine and 100 milligrams of alpha GPC into a single piece of gum. It's mint flavored, 0 sugar, but best of all, 50% of the profits from this first production run, I'm donating to charities that support Ukrainian civilians who've been injured or displaced in the conflict. So if you want to support Ukraine and get an energy drink alternative that is a fraction of the price, you want to check us out at strikegum.com. Link is in the description, or it'll appear up here in a card. We've got the trays on sale. This is the equivalent of 75 pieces, so 75 energy drinks, but unlike energy drinks, it's like 68, 70 cents a piece. An absolute steal. So check us out, strikegum.com. Now, here's what I thought was also interesting and perhaps a bit troubling. Pentagon is announcing, actually, that it's running low on funds for Ukraine because Congress has not passed a supplemental request back in August. The DoD Deputy Press Secretary has said, quote, "We've been forced to meter out our support to Ukraine. We've used 95% of the original $62 billion." and there's a small amount left, but our packages are getting smaller and smaller because we have to meter out our support for Ukraine. And this is a problem for a bunch of reasons. One, it signals to Russia that they just need to keep pushing, right? If you know that the material is getting shut off, then to Russia, they just need to know that they need to keep cruising at their current pace, right? They're doing, 55 miles an hour down the highway, and they know that Ukrainians are going to run out of gas before Russia does. And if that happens, then then Ukraine is going to be in a tactically extremely disadvantageous position. Now, I think that when push comes to shove, Congress will get it together. They're going to realize that at this point, this is a referendum on what it means to be America's friend, what it means to be supported by the West. A lot of these countries that aren't necessarily aligned with the West, but aren't necessarily aligned with the kind of BRICS movement, they're looking at this and they're saying, whose support do we want? Who's going to go hard in the paint? And I think for that reason alone, the West needs to step it up and make sure Ukraine can continue this fight. A lot of people are worried. They say, oh, well, it's escalatory. Well, thus far, the conflict's problem has not been escalation, right? And it sort of annoys me because there's a lot of commentators who spent the last year wringing their hands that the NATO was dangerously escalating the conflict, when in fact, clearly, NATO has not only have they failed to escalate the conflict, they've created a stalemate that even both sides admit things have been literally frozen in place. So far from escalating the conflict to dangerously out of control, the conflict is frozen dangerously still. And so I think that was a huge concern with the aid packages. So now that we've confirmed that these aid packages are not escalatory, suddenly everyone has a bunch of other arguments against them. And it's really quite annoying, especially when you're talking about taking out Russian forces who've invaded a sovereign country. And the fact is that every one of these old stock materials were meant to do one thing: take out the Russian military. It's hard for me to justify after hearing and reading some of these things. But if you really want to do something, you can always write your congressman. If you're a U.S. citizen, send them an email, tweet at them. You can even go on their website sometimes and just send them a quick message. It says, hey, I appreciate what Ukraine does. I think $62 billion, because remember, that's a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of the total U.S. Spending. Remember that $63 billion, the U.S. spends $6 trillion in fiscal year 2023. So you're talking about just a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. The U.S. spends less than that the U.S. spends more on housing, more on education, about the same on energy policy. It's literally twice what we spend on, quote, international affairs, more we spend on science, sure, but it's a fraction, right? The military, we spend $600 billion, so a tenth of the military budget. Just something to think about, guys. Just something to keep in mind. Again, just write your congressman. Let them know. Let them know to pass this thing. Anyway, guys, that's what you can do as a U.S. citizen. If you're not a U.S. citizen, right? I don't know. Dude, you guys in your home countries know how to influence your politics. Anyway, that's all I had, guys. As always, thank you to our Colonel tier members at combatvetnews.com. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members. We couldn't do this without you guys. And thanks to all the members of Combat Vet News. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Tell the YouTube algorithm that I make good content. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.